This is Hinshu and this is another episode of Hollywood Daikaiju. Once upon a time during the Great Depression. King Kong was released in 1933 to extreme critical acclaim, with its outstanding visual effects and stop-motion photography, and timeless tale of beauty and beast and grand adventure through escape audience of all ages needed. Since then, one sequel is rushed in production, and more movies, regardless of quality, came out in the following decades to bank on the legend. But going back between the sequel and the other movies, one movie was planned for a grand crossover with a fascinating legacy. Willis O'Brien, the stop-motion effects pioneer who gave us King Kong and its predecessor, 1925's The Lost World, as well as Son of Kong, submitted his script dubbed King Kong vs. Frankenstein, or known alternatively as King Kong vs. Prometheus, that would have had filmmaker Carl Denham capture Kong before he escapes and does battle with Frankenstein's enormous creation, composed of body parts of different animals where they duel to the death on the Golden Gate Bridge. An executive producer named John Beck was fascinated with Obi's script, that he foolishly went behind Obi's back and submitted the project to Toho Studios, who agreed to purchase the script on the condition that they replace Frankenstein's monster with Godzilla, who was in hibernation at the time, and produced the movie in conjunction with the studio's 30th anniversary, resulting in King Kong vs. Godzilla in 1962, becoming the biggest success in Japan, as Toho held a contract deal with Kong's owners, RKO Studios, to make Kong films in Japan. Their next film would have been a rematch between the two cinematic titans before it was cancelled. Later on, seeing the success to their own adaptation to the Kong cartoon in 1966, with RKO's permission too, Rankin Bass, who also gave us apes such as It from Mad Monster Party, and well, this fucker. Approached Toho for the opportunity for a joint production with newcomer Jun Fukuda and writer Shinichi Sekizawa, penning the script called Operation Robinson Crusoe, King Kong vs. Ebirah, before Rankin Bass pulled the plug and left the project because they both didn't accept the script's direction, and that Ishiro Honda is not the director. So Kong was replaced with Godzilla at the last minute, but the rest of the story remains the same. The result? Godzilla, Ebirah, Mothra. Great duel in the South Seas, in Japan. Internationally as Ebirah, Horror of the Deep, or in the US, Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. A young man named Ryota desperately seeks out his older brother Yata, having been informed by a priestess that he didn't die at sea. Along with two other people, he takes the helm of a boat belonging to a wanted robber, Yoshimura, played by Toho legend Akira Takarada, who in turn gets roped into the crazy adventure, only to become crazier when a giant claw emerged from the sea during a storm, resulting in washing the men up on the remote Latechi Island. They meet a lone native woman named Dio, played by Kumi Mizuno, who came from Infant Island, the home of Mothra, where they learn that most of her people are captured by a terrorist organization called the Red Bamboo, who take control of the sea monster Ebirah, and Ryota's older brother is on Infant Island, alive. But now that they're on an island with armed men and giant monsters, it's up to them to survive and fight tooth and nail with their wits, while also awakening Godzilla to do battle with his most greatest challenge ever. Pre-cooked lobster dinner. Besides the beginning, this is the first Godzilla movie of its kind to not entirely take place at a primary country, but on an island, where the characters are forced to evade for their lives from the relentless dangers with their wits and camaraderie for one another to literally save not just the natives of Infant Island, but perhaps the whole world, having no contact with the outside world involving scientists, reporters, and a reliable military, to deal with a terrorist group with not just guns, ships, and monsters, but worse, nuclear weapons. But I always wonder, given the context of the final product being non-linear with the continuity, is how Godzilla wound up in an underground cavern. Didn't he and Rodan plummeted in the ocean with Ghidorah at the end of Monster Zero? I like to think maybe both monsters were in a coma from the impact of the fall, and Godzilla's body got washed up in the cave. The characters don't fare too well. Ryota, the film's lead, has nothing much going, other than his fierce determination to see his older brother rescued, but the film doesn't explore on this dilemma further. Maybe if he gave exposition during the island exploration about how his brother always had his back through thick and thin, and how Ryota could go through an arc of strength, growth, and responsibility, because what Yata taught him when he was a weaker younger child, and those lessons transitioned to his courage. The villainous captain and commander, played both by Akiko Hirata and Jun Tezaki, are just generic mustache-twirling baddies with a motivation to conquer the world that's never explored, either. Not sure whether for communism or fascism. They're just bad because the captain has a eye patch. Oh, hey Sarazawa. As for the two other interesting characters, Yoshimura, while not another deep character, he is still engaging as he begins being a criminal on the run from the law to a proactive natural leader in a place outside the mainland, knowing he's dealing with a threat much bigger than what he's done before. Clearly he should be the lead, and Ryota would be the supporting character, even though he's not so bright when it comes to common sense.
You can stay tonight, but tomorrow you've got to disappear. Now get some sleep. Hey, are you out of your mind?
What do you think was going to happen when you let a bunch of strangers spend the night on your boat? The infant islander, Dio, is more down-to-earth, curious, brave, and sympathetic. Dio shows great concern for her people being enslaved and tormented by the Ran Bamboo, and doesn't start off as a stereotypically spiteful and hostile man-hater, who has to learn to get along with the group as the story progresses, and she immediately lends her trust to the four men thanks to their clever thinking and resourcefulness. Filling in the role of Kong, Godzilla is depicted differently from the previous entries, involving his transition from a force of destruction to a hero. He's merely a big gun throughout the film with equally sick volleyball skills, and exhortatious towards the sight of Dio while fighting monsters in between, but he does decimates the Red Bamboo's forces, atomic fire and super regeneration and all. Now really think about this movie was meant to be a Kong engine. So if every scene in this film is Kong's doing from what we see in the final product, do you think Kong would stand a chance against those? A few men with guns and monsters, sure, but Kong got shot several times on the Empire State Building, primarily the chest area, and sure wouldn't last against this many firearms guarding HQ. And it's not like they did some last few minutes tweaking in the script. This was in the original script. Or is Toho so reliant on the mandatory idiots aiming their missiles around the target but not the real blibbin' target cliche? Also, Godzilla shoots Ebirah with his atomic breath. You think maybe Kong threw a boulder or threw a punch? Ebirah, to be honest, is totally lame, but acceptable. Here, let me explain. Coming off the powerful King Ghidorah, he clearly doesn't hold a candle to him in terms of power and origin. To go from a massive three-headed dragon causing global devastation to just lackluster oxymorons. King Ghidorah is a space monster whose origins of destroying planets are vague, shooting powerful streams of lightning and causing great windstorms, a great and deadly force that requires several monsters to team up against to save the Earth, making him an eternal nemesis to Godzilla. Ebirah, meanwhile, has more deadly abilities as Ghidorah's successor. Pinching! Sick volley rockball skills! And worse! Splashing! Oh yeah, and he flies as well. However, he does aesthetically work as a monster rival for Kong, being that both are primarily a tooth and claw / nail kaiju. And if he were a Godzilla monster, he would be the lesser supporting monster, rather than the main antagonist, like if he is easily dominated by Godzilla. Oh, wait, and plus, he's a crustacean. How can it not make for a good basics of a kaiju, power differences notwithstanding? Mothra is wasted. She could have had a prominent role, being on the title, of course. But she spends the entire movie sleeping. Yeah, if you're a grand and active deity who values and protects your subjects, you could just let them suffer by making juice. Makes sense. By the time she awakes at the third act, it doesn't matter, other than she fights Godzilla and eventually taking her people and the heroes off before Latechi Island blows up. And why does Godzilla attack her, by the way? I mean, I know the script was going to have Kong attack and fight Mothra, but you think they could have done tweaks at the end of the film for consistency with the previous setup between. Mothra changes Godzilla and Rodan's ways and fight Ghidorah by her side to save the Earth, setting Godzilla on the right path. Or maybe Godzilla is desensitized by the mere sight of a cute, colorful butterfly that triggers him. As for the movie's theme and effects... okay, fine. There's also an out-of-nowhere giant bird who is sickening. Literally. It has one brief clash with Godzilla so close you could imagine a Hans Zimmer score playing. He's got strong gusts of winds generating from his wings. He's a piece of leftover flying prop from Rodan. He inspired this noise for this noisy thing. And he apparently has his fans? And he's become dinner for the lobster dinner. The end. Bye! I think the only themes involve simple loyalty and bravery for a few of the characters, including Ryota and Dio for the devotion of their family and friends, while Ichino and Nita have nothing much going for, except for Nita being...
We are friends. What do you think of that boat? Hey, what's going on up there? Maybe the music hypnotized him.
Poor old Snarf, that's who.
In the international version, they take risks that results on the outcome with the surrounding monsters, such as Ichino contributing to the awakening of Godzilla with lightning surging through a sword and metal wiring. It's a lot. Hey, what? And thanks to Nita's clumsy capture, enacts a plan with the Infant Island prisoners to replace the juice with phony liquid for Ebirah to decimate the Red Bamboo commander and captain. With Eiji Tsuburaya stepping in as supervisor of special effects due to his health problems, his protege Sadamasa Arikawa steps in as the director of special effects. They are decent in terms of miniatures. The execution on the destruction at the Red Bamboo base and the fire jets are all well done, considering how it's literally the only miniature sequence they can afford to build, due to Arikawa being ordered to economize the budget, after most of it was used for the production of War of the Gargantuas the same year. Hence why most of the action between two of the three titled kaiju mainly is set in Toho's big pool, but there are some uneven composite effects involving proportions between human and monsters sharing the same screen, and the jets look like pencil marker lines. The Daisenso Godzilla suit looks a bit Cookie Monster-like, but still sporting a gentler looking vibe, which seems to allude to the more kid-friendly depiction of Kong from the Rankin Bass cartoon. Mothra looks alright, but most of the time she looks like a dust wand with eyes. And Ebirah looks good despite being a generic crustacean. Get lost! In the end, Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster may be a step down in terms of quality, breaking the traditional mold of the previous film's thematic elements of their political and social commentary and more outlandish, unworldly fare. It can be viewed with low expectations for anyone in for a good old-fashioned feel of escape and a sense of fun summertime-like vibe. You have an adventure on a tropical island, entertainment anthropomorphic giant monster action, decent to often likable characters, and of course some of the most energized, laid-back, toe-tap, and often eerie, suspenseful music, composed by Jun Fukuda collaborator Masuro Sato, such as Endurance Dance Rally being my #1 favorite track in the movie. A fun feature to even show to your kids that doesn't need to try any harder to be important. Just ask these guys.
Get me some butter. Now listen, I'm on a seafood diet. I see food and I rip it out of your arm.
Good silly movie. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for the next video on the way. Now if you excuse me,
Something funny going on.
man, you know, all this melodrama over a chocolate bar. Good night, everybody.